YouTube and welcome to the Miniature Construction Company. Why are we looking at tea towel, you might be asking yourself? Well, underneath is my finished Henglong truck that I've been painting for weeks, wanted to try out the salt chipping method for the paintwork. There'll be a reveal at the end of the video, but first I'd like to try and go through the steps and the stages that brought me to the finished product. I'll apologise now, it might be a little bit disjointed in places because it's been filmed over several weeks, but stick with it and there'll be a big reveal of the truck at the end. So the first part of the video is going to be concerning the painting of the vehicle. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, I've had to halt painting for the time being as I've run into a problem. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have been able to tell what that was, and it was the fact that I didn't let the salt and water chipping layer dry before I applied the spray paint, and this had the effect of creating this horrible, thick, sticky, goopy mess. Particularly on the mud guards and the roof. Now I've managed to pick most of it off, but I think what I'll have to do is wet and dry the remainder off and then basically start again. Now it's not too much of an issue because I think this will make an excellent base for the rest of the chipping and the weathering, so I'll sand it down and then we'll continue. Now, it was after I'd sort of wet and dried the cab down I realised the problem wasn't that bad, so I decided to continue with the painting. So without further ado, let's move on to demonstrating the salt chipping. So what I thought I'd do was briefly demonstrate or go through the technique of salt chipping. I've already done several layers to this truck body, and it's just to have the final coat of red applied. Before that though, we need to apply the salt and let it dry, because the salt obviously masks the sprayed layer of paint that you apply, so later on you can brush or chip it off and it will reveal the colour or colours underneath and give it this lovely sort of worn and beaten look. Now I think there is a primer, a grey primer first, then they put a coat of silver, then like a red oxide colour, and then finally I sprayed it with a bit of yellow to sort of pretend that that was the original colour and it's been sprayed back over in red at some point during its life. Anyway, first things first, with the salt technique, you need to brush a bit of water on. I find that using a little drop of detergent just to break the surface tension up of the water helps a great deal. Well, the wonderful thing about salt chipping is you can get this depth of you get all these different colours, and you can't really, it's very difficult to mimic any other way. But anyway, I just use normal table salt for this. Basically get it, and wherever you want to chip the paint, just apply the salt. Now it's a bit of trial and error really, but try and do it in areas that you think would wear and chip. So I'm just trying to do it over there. You can always brush some of it off afterwards. We'll have some on the very edge, I think, as well. Now that's basically all there is to it. What you'll do is let this dry, and when it's dry, spray the colour over the top, wait for that to dry, and then you can brush it off or chip it off with a stiff brush. Right, I've applied all the salt that I want. If you put a bit too much on and you need to get it off, all you have to do is sort of wait till it dries, and then you can just brush it off. Best advice really is to try and think about the areas that would get chipped naturally and try and recreate that. So like I say, I've put all the salt on it that I'm going to do. All I have to do now is wait till it dries and then take it in the garage and spray it. Okay, I've moved to the garage. The salt has dried. Now I'm going to attempt to spray and film at the same time. The final colour that the cab is going to be is red. So right, let's see how this goes. So basically just spray it on as you, not too thick of a coat, but just enough to sort of give it a misting. Doesn't matter if you blow some of the salt off, it's not a problem. Okay, well, been in the garage, sprayed up the body. I've also done the grill and the little fuel tanks. So what's left to do now is to sit here and chip the salt off, and when that's all done, hopefully we'll see the layers of detail underneath. So I'll see you in a bit. Right, I've chipped all the salt off and I've given it a little rub down with wet and dry. I was a bit worried at first, I must admit, because the red had gone on pretty thick in places and it looked a bit of a mess, but since I've done it, since I've chipped it, it's actually looking pretty good. I'm actually really pleased with it. Like I say, it's my first attempt at this salt chipping technique. It's actually, excuse me, worked out pretty well. As you can see, all the layers, all the previous layers of paint that have been applied have come through in places, and they just, it looks brilliant. It looks absolutely fantastic. So I'm really chuffed. Also, just quickly did the grill, put a bit of black where the original sort of hex pattern was at the front, Also, the fuel tanks have been painted, and I did a little bit of detailing in the cab. So I painted the seats and the dashboard, etc. So all that's left to do is to assemble the cab and put the rest of the truck back together and show you the finished article. See you in a bit. Okay, well, before we go, there's one or two little things I think may be of interest to you. I painted the auxiliary lights and the mirrors, and also the exhaust stacks. Now, I used rust for the exhaust stacks, but I also used this. Now, it's called Metal Coat from Humbrol, and it's actually a polishable paint. And when you polish it up, it looks like metal, hence the name. So it's quite a useful tool to have, because you can these little plastic bits on the mirrors, etc. You can paint and then gently with a rag polish them up, and they look like metal. So that's a little bit of a tip for you there. As ever, if you've enjoyed the video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're feeling that way inclined, click the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.